Hey everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Fantasy Football 123. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. Now, the way this is going to work is every week I'm going to tell you 3 players that you need to be watching on Sunday and Monday, 2 players who are owned in less than 50% of Yahoo leagues that you need to think about picking up, and then I'll sum it up with one final thought, one little bit of wisdom. So, who are the 3 players that you need to be watching in week 1? Well, to me, the first one is easy, and it's Brett Favre. Now, I know that you may have some Favre overload. I mean, we all do. But there's absolutely no denying that he is one of the most compelling and one of the most important individual players for this fantasy season. Because if he can come back and play like he did last year, obviously this is a guy that you need to start every week. But we've got ankle issues. Sidney Rice is out. We don't know what really we're going to get from Percy Harvin on a weekly basis. We know the Saints are going to pressure Favre like they did in the NFC title game last year. How's Favre going to deal with that? So I think we didn't get to see a whole lot of Favre in the preseason. So I think what we see in week 1 is going to be pretty telling for what we might see in the future from Favre. So he's definitely a guy to watch. Another guy to watch is Jacoby Jones, the wide receiver for the Houston Texans. Now, Jacoby's entering his 4th year, and he's never really been fantasy relevant. I mean, this guy, he's never had more than 30 receptions. He ended the season strong last year with 2 straight games where he scored a touchdown, but he's never been a guy really that you would think about starting or really keeping on your bench. But that could change this year. Houston has one of the most high-powered, pass-oriented offenses in the NFL. So whoever their number 2 receiver is going to have some value. For instance, Kevin Walter, who has been the number 2 receiver for Houston for the last 3 years and has been a pretty valuable guy as a 3rd wide receiver or a flex player. Well, there may be a changing of the guard in Houston, and a lot of the reports seem to indicate that Jacoby Jones could be taking over that number 2 role. I expect a shootout when Indianapolis visits Houston in week 1, and it's going to be very interesting to see if Jacoby Jones is a guy that's getting 5, 6, 7 targets opposite Andre Johnson. Because if he is, this is a big, talented, fast wide receiver. He has a very high yard per catch average, and he could really become, a fantasy sleeper if he's the guy who's getting those number 2 targets. So, the third person that I'm watching is Justin Forsett in Seattle, and really, it's the whole Seattle backfield. I mean, look, Seattle's not going to have that good of an offense this year. They're certainly not going to be able to pass the ball very well. Who could with Deion Branch and Mike Williams as your 2 receivers? But there's going to be 30 to 40 touches to go around in that backfield. And right now you have Justin Forsett battling for those touches with Leon Washington and Julius Jones. Now, it's possible that no clear leader emerges and just every week it's a crapshoot, in which case you want to stay away. But I'm going to be interested to see in week 1 if a clear leader emerges. If Justin Forsett's getting 15 to 20 touches, that's a good sign, and he's a guy who could certainly have some value and be worthy of starting as a flex position. Now, let's talk about 2 players who might be able to help your roster right now. And those 2 guys are Dexter McCluster and Jabbar Gaffney, both of whom are owned in less than 50% of Yahoo leagues, so they may be available for you to go pick up. Now, as far as McCluster goes, obviously he's a rookie, and if you've read the site, you know that I'm not really that high on putting faith into rookies. And I'm not saying that you should put faith into McCluster. This is a guy that you would want to, pick up and stash on your bench, but he could pay dividends down the road. Not only can he play running back and wide receiver in most leagues that I've seen, which, hey, there's value in versatility, but this is a guy, if you're in a PPR league, he's going to get receptions. During the preseason, they used him all over the place and even used him in the backfield more than people expected. So, he's a guy, if you watched him at Ole Miss, he's great in space. He can make plays. He's going to get some long touchdowns this year. So if you've got a chance for him, stash him on your bench. The other guy, Jabbar Gaffney in Denver. Now look, they're trying to replace Brandon Marshall. They drafted a rookie receiver, number 1. The Denver offense is in flux right now, okay? But in Kyle Orton, they have a guy who can produce decent numbers. He's not going to set the world on fire, but he can get the ball to the open receiver. And right now, Jabbar Gaffney is their number 1 guy. So he's not going to be your number 1 guy. You might not even want to trust him as a number 3 receiver. But once the bye weeks come around, once injuries start to happen, there are worse people to put in than a number 1 guy who's probably going to get 6 to 8 targets a game. He's going to have some value there for you. So let's sum it up now with one final thought. And very simply, it's don't overreact to week 1. Every year we see guys who blow up. Maybe a rookie has 6, 7 catches in week 1, and everybody rushes out to the waiver wire to pick him up, possibly dropping good, solid, productive veterans in the process. And, yes, when there is a guy who's going to, just explode onto the scene, you want to be the one to jump in and grab him. So you're going to have to use some judgment, but just don't overreact. If a guy has never done anything before and you hadn't even heard his name, and he just comes out of nowhere and scores 2 touchdowns, it might be a fluke, right? Now, if there's a guy like, say Jacoby Jones, for instance, that he comes out, has 6-7 catches, 100 yards, a touchdown, he's a guy maybe if he's out there on the waiver wire that you pick up because, his production, while surprising, may not be totally unexpected. So whatever you do, just don't overreact to week 1. All right. And that is our Fantasy Football 3-2-1 for this week. Tune in next week when I preview week 2.